Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Good morning, I'm Jeff Kellam. Welcome to this week's edition of Encounter. We're on the road again, and this time we are in what would you call this room?
This is the pastor's sitting room, office.
The pastor's sitting room. So I'm honored to be sitting, and we're socially distanced from one another. We are at Our Lady of Good Counsel, and Father Michael Galuppi is our guest today. I suppose that since 5th grade, I'm not sure I've missed a Sunday or very many Sundays in church. You know, from church to college chapel to seminary chapel, and then back to church, either in the pulpit or in the pews. And so it's really strange not to have been in church since March, except to be there virtually. And each week, Joan and I watch 3 different services from 3 people that we know and have been in contact with. I was also talking to someone recently who said that their mother had been to Mass every morning for like 50 years. And so when COVID struck, that was not just a tradition, not just a ritual, but that was a part of her spiritual practice that stopped. So that's why I wanted to talk to Father Michael Galuppi about what's going on in the Catholic Church during this COVID time. Let's start with right now. What would be going on in an afternoon at your church that's not going on now?
Well, the staff would normally be here a little bit longer, but a few cutbacks, you know, to sort of balance out where we are financially. But as far as my day-to-day, well, first of all, I never had a beard, and I grew it at the beginning of COVID because in my mind I was waiting for this triumphal reentry, you know, into church, and it's not been that. We're slowly coming in. I would say by dribs and drabs, but it's a slow build. So normally I would be free to go to any of the nursing homes. Today I would be celebrating Mass at Ideal Nursing Home in the afternoon, which is sort of an annex to this congregation and one of my favorite things to do. Not allowed into nursing homes. As of the beginning of July, we are re-allowed into hospitals, but for a few months there was only one priest allowed in to do the anointings.
Right.
Religious Ed came to an abrupt end, and we have really worked hard to put into place several possible plans so that we can plug into whatever we're told we should do.
Yeah. Yeah, because one of the things that kids these days are missing are some of the high school graduations, the proms, sports, but for the church you're also missing confirmation.
Yeah, so normally we'd be preparing for confirmation in the fall, but we're going to move it to the spring. Our folks who normally would come into the church at the Easter Vigil, we did that in June this year.
You know, many years ago, I spent some time at a Trappist monastery, and Father Stephen, who was the guest master, said that prior to Vatican II, he had to wear wool during the summer because that's what Rome dictated, and whatever Rome said went all over the world. Now, your regulations for COVID, are they coming more from the state or from Rome or from the individual diocese?
They come from the individual diocese, but our bishop worked with all of the departments of health for the 7 counties. Yeah. And we had a 16-point contract even. You know, we had to sign it and promise to do these 16 things before we were allowed to reopen. And whether or not, you know, we find out in the future that they were actually necessary, but we're doing them because we would be responsible if someone were to get sick. Whereas if I think we follow all the protocols and somebody gets sick, we wouldn't be held responsible. But so far so good.
Yeah. So when March came, was this an abrupt?
Very abrupt.
Yeah.
In fact, I started the announcements at 4 o'clock on a Saturday saying, we're not sure what's going to happen with schools, and then someone cried out from the congregation, nope, they've just been closed. So, and then I wasn't prepared to go online for a week, which I thought that was okay. I directed people to the bishop because he's new and he was doing Mass every day online. And then 2 weeks later, we were able to open up online and not just for the weekend, but during the week as well.
Yeah. So the diocese is from Syracuse on through the southern tier.
Yeah, it goes from the Pennsylvania border to Pulaski and from Utica to Skaneateles.
And each of the counties are going to be a little bit different. So that means individual conscience would have something to do with whether or not you participate in the life of the church.
Well, for Catholics, it's considered an obligation, but that obligation has been dispensed and it continues to be dispensed until the state is fully reopened. And when we restarted, when we got the red light, or the green light to reopen, we weren't forced to reopen. Once they gave us about a month to get everything in place. And then once we did that, we were getting about 80 to 90 people on a weekend per service, and we cut our services in half. We set up the gym because thought, well, maybe if there was overflow, but we haven't had to do that yet. But we can seat 400, but because when we started, we could only do 25%, so we fit about 100 in there. They say we can do 50%, but we have to maintain social distance. But in that building, we couldn't do social distance at 50%. So we're still maintaining about 25% of capacity, and the weekend after Labor Day, we'll just double up our services. We'll go from 2 to 4.
Now, did you have the technology in place to stream the service at the very beginning?
No, we had to buy some equipment. I had to learn how to Zoom. We were doing Zoom. And it was trial by error, Every weekend we got a little bit better. I said, by the time we're perfect, we won't have to do this anymore.
Right. And many churches are saying, well, we've got this experience now, we've got this equipment. Our church has a tech person now on staff part-time to help with this. And once we get back to normal, then we would continue to stream, because there are always going to be people in the nursing home or at-home members who can't make it.
Yeah, some people say, oh, I love watching Mass from the comfort of my Barker lounge.
Right. I can get up anytime I want, and if the sermon isn't engaging, then
Yeah, and we chose to Zoom because that way we could have participation of lectors and musicians from their own home in the service, so they didn't just have to look at my face, And we had fun with that, even with the Easter Vigil, where there's 7 readings from the Old Testament and 3 from the New Testament. We were able to get a lot of involvement from people without anybody having to be in the same building.
That's great. And now tell me some of the things that you really miss even now. And we're recording this program 10 days ahead, and so things could change. But right now, what are the things you miss the most?
I certainly miss greeting the people. We're not supposed to greet the people or hang around after Mass. We're supposed to go right into the sacristy, So that's what I really miss. When do you have the most contact with your congregation? As they're coming and, as they're leaving. I miss the fact that we can't do, hospitality after Mass and have coffee hour, and that's another touch point, with people and where they are and whether they like the sermon or not, etc. That I miss greatly. I do miss my time at the nursing home, because I've grown very fond of the people and we were getting anywhere from 70 to 90 people at a Tuesday afternoon, and I certainly miss contact with our young people, because there's a lot of life there.
Can you Zoom with them in a youth group kind of situation?
We can. In fact, we did a completely online Bible studies, Vacation Bible School, with youth ministers of 7 or 8 parishes in the southern tier. I know the youth ministers had a ton of fun with it, and but we had a lot of participation in that. So that was geared to kids from 1st grade through 5th grade.
Right. Now, what about the sacraments? You're streaming Mass.
Yes.
I heard it, and I think it was on NPR. I heard a rabbi refer to a bar mitzvah, and he said, please don't use the word virtual. He said, this is a real bar mitzvah, but it is broadcast digitally. We're doing it at a distance from one another. How does it work with Mass?
Well, I celebrate the Eucharist, and oftentimes our Mass is celebrated for somebody who has passed. So I still do that, and honor that person, that family's request. But we've added a prayer after I receive communion. It's a spiritual communion prayer, which brings in everybody who is watching, and based on the Lord's words, I am with you always, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, and so it's to help those who are there but not able to participate in the reception of the sacrament, to spiritually commune with the Lord at that moment.
So now that folks are allowed back in church, they can still receive the host?
Yes. So I got masks that match the liturgical colors, so I'll wear green during ordinary time. And so as long as I'm masked, they come up for communion masked. I have to purify my hands, and then they go to the side and then they receive. But yes, that was the thing that I think people missed the most. They had access to the scriptures, they had access to the message, but they didn't have access to Eucharist.
In the Presbyterian Church, the Office of the General Assembly, which is located in Louisville for the Presbyterian Church USA, had to decide what to do about communion, and decided that theologically, in our tradition, folks could have communion at home. And so the minister, and not every church has bought into this, so I think it's up to the individual session or governing board of the church, but some have said, we will have communion, a streaming communion service, and you at home can have your bread. And Presbyterians are often used to grape juice, but at home we can get wine if we want it. And so we would break the bread and have the wine at home, and think of a spiritual connection that was not terribly foreign to our Reformed theology. But again, not everyone wanted to participate, and there is something, Joan and I have found something missing. To simply serve one another and realize this is not going forward together to receive communion. It's not the feeling that we are sharing in the body of Christ.
Yeah, and for, Catholics, we will bring communion to the homebound, but there is something that about the celebration itself, being separated from the sacrament, that during COVID especially, the bishop said, I really don't want us to do that, So now, of course, at the first few months we couldn't do home visits, but he didn't want, like drive-by communion or me just standing at the door of church handing out communion. Right. Because the celebration and the reception of the sacrament really should be seen as one thing, except, in special circumstances.
And in explaining all of this, it is an educational thing for folks who may have, pardon the expression, perhaps mindlessly just gone through the ritual of this is what we do, and they don't think about what they're doing until something happens where they can't do it anymore. And then you begin to ask those questions that are often theological questions, but you didn't realize it at the time. A
beneficial side effect is the building up of that hunger, for something that you've taken for granted. And the amount of, real emotion that I saw that first Sunday for people who hadn't received Eucharist in 3 months, it was powerful to see. In fact, when I said, "The Lord be with you," and I got an actual real response for the first time in 3 months, I teared up.
Well, I think it's wonderful just to see people's faces and to take away those masks so that Now we can see people smiling. We can see response. So, our guest today is Father Michael Galuppi. He is the pastor, priest in charge. What is your title?
Pastor.
Pastor.
Yeah, pastor.
At both St. Ambrose Church on Washington Avenue in Endicott, and also here on the corner of Griffin Avenue and West Main Street in Endicott at Our Lady of Good Counsel. So, the things that you've missed, but some things continue. So let's talk about how the church, even when our doors are not fully open, we are still involved in mission. We are still serving people. I noticed a pew full of potatoes out here in the hallway. So tell me about some of the mission things that are still going on.
So we still have our food pantry, which is open to the public on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We went from a full-scale soup kitchen on Fridays to to-go containers, but we're still serving, 30 to 40 individuals on a Friday evening. One of the things that we did, I think many churches probably did this as well, was to call every registered parishioner. But it was a blessing because for those who either didn't answer or we couldn't get a number, we were able to send a note. And then we were going to find out who moved or who had a different number, who had a cell number, who now has internet, and we can, contact them online. It was a great way to sort of refresh our census. But also, as far as mission goes, to let everybody know that even though we don't see you, we're thinking of you, we're praying for you. Is there anything you need? I know that a number of parishioners organized, sort of drive-by visits, but we try to make sure that we reminded people that, we can still be Christian in the midst of this. If you know somebody who needs food, you don't have to come in, just drop it on the doorstep and ring the doorbell and wave and, continue to care for your neighbor.
Yep. And one of the things certainly that people, once they know things are missing, that there's an emptiness, there's an absence, like when you can't take Mass for 3 months. It certainly multiplies your desire to be back in touch and to be, you realize what community means. Someone has talked about this as being the longest Lent we've ever had.
Right.
But I think other than that, it's the feeling that perhaps it's the longest Sabbath we've had. If Sabbath rest means drawing back from all the activities and the buzz of what some churches are like day by day, it's good for us to be a little bit more quiet, meditative.
I found that. I know families. I mean, it's an up or down thing. Being in the house 24/7. But on the other hand, hopefully they've come to know each other,
Right.
and appreciate each other better. But so I do look forward to the day when we're, I don't know what the new normal will look like, but I bet in a couple years this will seem like a distant memory. But for right now, when people come back for the first time, there's a nervousness. But once they see that, really it is safe, I've got room between me and my neighbor, this is under control, people have felt very comfortable. Nobody's not come back after coming back.
And the churches are being cleaned. It's not like they're full of cooties in the pew.
Right. Oh yeah, they're being cleaned. Being cleaned so much that I think our finish is coming off the pews. But
Right. Tell me how you are working out personally with the contacts that you have with your colleagues in ministry. Do you do Zoom meetings? Do you keep in touch? This is about your personal spiritual health, I guess.
Yeah, so normally during Holy Week, all of the priests, the entire presbyterate would get together with the bishop. So we did that on Zoom, which was kind of a hoot to have, 70 or 100, of us, many of our aging clergy trying to figure out, am I here, am I not, can you hear me, can you not hear me? But that's been a great tool of communication, even with, meetings with the Chancery downtown. As far as local clergy, we really try to do things in sync, so when we were given the permission to reopen, we all decided to reopen at the same time, but at a modified schedule. So to work together so that we would incrementally do things at the same time.
Right.
We've been in communication with each other about best practices. How did you do First Communion? How did you do the Easter sacraments, etc.?
Because you're not Lone Rangers.
No, and there is great support, especially in Broome County, among the clergy.
Wonderful. We talked a little bit about the sacrament of Holy Communion. What about the other sacraments of the church? You mentioned, for example, going to a nursing home or what used to be called last rites.
Yeah, so it worked if you were in a hospital, because we did have one priest, Father Corey Van Kuren, who did all of our anointings. And of course he's at UHS. We have another priest who was able to go into Lourdes. Sadly, nobody's been allowed in a nursing home. But, you know, it's happened sometimes where somebody in a nursing home would be transferred to the hospital, even if it was 24 hours. Then we could get in and see them, and then they would be returned home. But I feel badly because the nursing home entrance is still something that we're trying to work with the staffs. But, you know, I suggested, you know, it's beautiful. Bring the patients outside.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's in the morning and it's nice and cool, you know, I could greet them there and they could be brought back. So that hasn't happened yet, but it's one of the suggestions we're floating.
Right. And then marriage is a sacrament in the Catholic Church.
Yes.
So have you been doing weddings?
So a few weddings. Of the 5 or 6 weddings planned for this summer, 4 of them have been moved to the next year. One of them I did outside. Our bishop is now allowing outside weddings, and it was very intimate. It was only 10 participants at the time, you know, but it was beautiful. And then a wedding here 2 weeks ago, they made masks for everybody, had them embroidered with the date and the, you know, initials of the couple. Where we would put tape up to keep people out of certain pews, they covered with flowers. So really, it was classy. So I'm hoping 25 years from now, they pick up these masks and say, remember this? Yep. Remember COVID? That was crazy.
A little souvenir.
Yeah. During Easter, I was doing the Sacrament of Reconciliation outdoors. I have moved indoors, but we put plexiglass up, and then I have to sanitize, you know, the door handles and all that between each person.
Right.
Confirmation, normally priests are given the faculties to confirm through the Easter season, otherwise it's the bishop. But that was extended all the way through till June so that we could confirm those members of our communities who had been preparing for the whole year.
Right. There are a number of folks who've talked about the funerals being delayed until after the COVID experience. Yeah. It's going to be really difficult for churches with a large population, a large parish, because you've got a lot of catching up to do, helping people say those final goodbyes.
Thankfully, we only had 3 or 4, but now that we can, you know, allow 25% capacity, we haven't had a problem. Right. But you know, people are again doing creative things. One lady who passed away, who was a very active member, family all over the country. So they've already booked a memorial service on the 1-year anniversary of her death for next May, that the family is planning to come in. Right. But I made sure that even if we couldn't have a funeral, I celebrated a mass for them. We prayed for, you know, all of our folks who passed away throughout that time. And the upside of that was, you know, the relatives from out of town could watch that, you know, and see some of that celebration online.
Well, and that's how many people are keeping in touch in their family situations and sometimes you're feeling closer to folks now because you feel a desire and a need to be in touch more often. Mm-hmm. And folks who have never used Zoom or one of the other platforms for video before, Skype, now they're learning how to do that. Yeah. And maybe some family things will open up so that folks will get a sense of seeing people that, well, I've got family in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's been a year, I guess, since we've seen them. Mm-hmm. And we're not likely to drive to Raleigh anytime soon. No. So that would be a good way for us to keep up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're getting toward just a couple of minutes left. One closing thought, when things get back to normal, what kind of celebrations do you think you're going to be having?
Well, our Garlic and Gaelic are combined St. Patrick's Day, St. Joseph's Day celebration. Yeah. most people didn't ask for their tickets back. We said we would have a party, so we're going to celebrate at some point where we can get together and, have music and, and food and enjoy that. And, I think once the church is full again, it is going to be a natural celebration just to be back again. Right now our music is modified, so we'll go back to full music and just to have our kids participate again. I'm looking forward to that as well.
I forgot to ask about music, because that is something that's going to be very different for a lot of churches. Many churches won't be singing hymns, at least in the next months. Someone had said that the world is not going to end because Gabriel's not allowed to blow a trumpet. So we'll just have to wait. Thank you very much for taking the time and letting me come into your office to
Thanks.
set up
Thank
all
you,
this
Jeff,
equipment.
for thinking of me. And
Well, it's always
having
a joy to have you here. I've got certain people I love to just call, and on short notice, you carve a little place for your schedule. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Our guest today has been Father Michael Galuppi, who is the pastor at both St. Ambrose Catholic Church and Avenue in downtown Endicott, and also the priest at Our Lady of Good Counsel here at the corner of Griffin Avenue and West Main Street, and just outside, well, it's West Endicott. And I want to thank you for joining us for the Encounter program produced by the Broome County Council of Churches. And our thanks to WBNG TV for carrying the video, and for the Town Square media stations for carrying the audio of our program. So I'm Jeff Kellam, the Parish Associate at the Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott, hoping that in the coming week you'll stay well and be gentle with people and with yourself.
But wait, there's more. Please join us in this year's Chow Walk. It's a virtual event. From October 1st to October 9th, walk a quarter mile for the 1 out of 4 kids in Broome County who don't know where their next meal is coming from. So join us for the Chow Walk, a virtual walk. Go to broomecouncil.net and click on Chow for details. That's broomecouncil.net and click on Chow.